I run a podcast network, but before I started that, I was in IT for many years and eventually got into software development full time. So I live both on the system administration side, the network ops side, and then software development. And the one thing that all these different careers, if you can call them that, and even now with podcasting really have in common is, really the topic of what we're talking about is alert fatigue, is that you're on call, especially when you're running a small business, if it's just you, but even as the business grows, it just gets more important. I was the system administrator and network ops guy for a research company that had hundreds, if not thousands, of different workstations and dozens of servers, and I was the guy. And I'd get called in the middle of the night, paged in the middle of the night, and it was something that was a really, really big challenge. Now, this was a long time ago. This was many, many years ago, and it's amazing to me that we're still facing almost all the same problems, that although the technology has changed and that we're not necessarily wearing a one-way pager, we're still getting paged, we're still getting called, we're still getting these same kinds of notifications and dealing with these same issues. And that's what we're here to talk about today. That's a little bit about me, but let's go down the line and introduce each other, and we can learn who we all are up here.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, my name is Johnny Wilkinson. I'm the VP of Product at PagerDuty. And we recently established backstage that I am very passionate about wearing scarves inside.
Right.
We discussed whether that was appropriate or not. Still to be concluded. I'm also really passionate about ensuring we can connect the right people to the right problems and solve those quickly. And having been at PagerDuty now for a couple of years, I'm very passionate about helping continue to address the ongoing problem of alert fatigue.
Well said. Hi, I'm Dan Turchin. I'm from Big Panda. I head up product. And I don't think I need to describe what we do. I think it's pretty self-explanatory from the name. In case it isn't, however. We're a data science platform for IT operations. And we solve that age-old noisy alert problem. And we exist because in IT ops, we now live in a world where everything around us went and changed. The infrastructure changed, the applications went and changed, and yet the tools haven't changed. So Big Panda is making it easier for human beings to manage the decades-old noisy alert problem.
So I'm Greg Vincent. I'm VP of Engineering at a local startup here in the city. We're called YouCaring. We are a free crowdfunding site mostly for personal charitable fundraising. We're a small team, 5 engineers, pretty young company, and when we talk about alert fatigue in a team that small, basically that means that I'm the guy waking up at 2 in the morning when the payment system goes down. And
right, you're the person who's suffering.
This is a topic very near and dear to.
Right, very much suffering with this problem that we're describing here. That the two of them and their people are kind of working to solve. Right. So what do you feel like is your biggest challenge when it comes to alert fatigue that we're talking about now? What's the thing that really stands out for you as something that absolutely, if you could solve it by snapping your fingers right now, or maybe they can snap their fingers and make something happen, what is that one issue?
For me, it's I need ultimate configurability. So to give you a bit of background about how we're using alerts, we've been a New Relic customer for about a year now. We've instrumented our code base with the New Relic SDK, so we're logging New Relic custom metrics, custom attributes, around our primary flows. And as a site that takes in donations, our primary flows are, of course, donations and fundraiser creation. So PayPal had a data center outage 3 weeks ago. I don't know if any of you may have been affected by that, but they were down for about 2 hours in the middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday. And so we had New Relic alerts in place to monitor for problems with the payments system. If we see 0 payments through that PayPal API in a specific window of time, alerts start to fire off. unfortunately, at 2 in the morning on a Sunday, we typically, the heuristics of a problem with that API are very different than they are on a Wednesday afternoon. So essentially, we had to tune that window up to 60 minutes, to accommodate the 2 o'clock on Sunday morning rule. And unfortunately, what that meant was that on Wednesday afternoon, when that alert, kicked in, it didn't kick in until 60 minutes after the actual data center.
Oh, right.
So that's just...
See, I think you're bringing up one of the points that I have on my list of things I really wanted to talk about, and that is that a lot of the time being, there's this failure, and the failure can be, sometimes it's because of the alert, sometimes it's because the notification doesn't happen when it should. Sometimes it's a failure of the human being too, in that we have the concept of these noisy alerts that we then start to ignore. I've gotten 10 of these things, I don't even need to go and worry about it. And then when the critical alert finally happens, you're in trouble because you don't notice it. You've become completely desensitized to this, the way we've been desensitized to violence on TV, or violence in the network is the same thing, right? Something terrible happens and we're like, it's not a big deal. I mean, at PagerDuty, how are you addressing that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I see it as it's actually a spectrum of problems, and I don't think there is a simple click your finger answer to this. I think it's a multidimensional problem. There's a lot of things to consider, but if I look at the extremes of the spectrum of alert fatigue, on one end you're alerting too many people. Right. And it's this sort of spray and pray mentality. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly when I think you get into the boy who cried wolf scenario that you described, Dan. And still a lot of organizations are adopting that kind of approach. And then if you shift it to the other side, you have too few people. And this is where typically you'll just have the ops team that is responsible for being on call, and I think you can normally tell when that's the case. It's kind of like people are walking around with this vacant expression on their face, because they've been up since 2 o'clock in the morning. And then in the middle you've got, or around about the middle, you've got this situation, depending on the operational model, it could be for more traditional centralized NOCs, there's actually a manual process to determine who to actually contact. And in that case, alert fatigue may be minimized, but you have this time aspect of response and the business impact. And then for more distributed teams, you have perhaps direct connection with monitoring tools. You're trying to automate as much as possible and tool around it. And that's when I think you really start to need to look at, okay, with a rising level of IT complexity, all of this data, how can we be smarter about how we can take that and do smart things with it, so that we're focusing smart people on tackling the hard problems. So there's a broad array of things to consider there, from how you orchestrate the correct response and get the right people together, but also then at the start of that process, how you can be more intelligent about taking that data and doing something meaningful with it. It's kind of like the whole garbage in, garbage out. Right. It really starts there, because if you're not being smart about how you take that data, then things start to go wrong down the chain.
Right, and I mean, a big part of what you talk about also, and I've read a number of articles you guys have put out about it, you talk a lot about that, what you might call the human problem, in a way that, managing people and working with them. And I know, Dan, you've talked a lot about machine learning, event coordination, and customizing and tuning things in. Could you talk about how that's another solution that you can take to address this problem?
So it's fundamentally a problem driven by machine data, increasing volumes of machine data. But we kind of flip that on its head and think about it first and foremost in terms of a business problem, and in terms of the human toll that business problem extracts. So, there's a story that sticks out in my mind. Recently, a customer's telling me that kind of brings home this problem for me. The technology company, and they manage security as a service for their 8,500 external customers, mostly large enterprises. And recently there was a DDoS attack that was attempted that generated about 30,000 machine alerts across about, I think it's 7 or 8 different data sources. Man. The Big Panda sitting in front of these 7 or 8 data sources and correlating these 30,000 or so alerts that, we're talking 15 minutes worth of alerts, 30,000 alerts, into 15 high-level incidents. Now, a team of 30 NOC engineers was able to triage those 15 incidents within the SLA. they had a 15-minute SLA to restore service. Historically, a DDoS attack of that scale would take down the whole service for all 8,500 customers for hours, typically 2 to 3 hours. Now, because they were able to isolate the signal from the noise, the 15 incidents from the 30,000 alerts, all of a sudden within the 15-minute SLA window, they've got 30 smart people who are able to get together, triage the problem, address the root cause, and restore service before a customer was ever impacted. So it was those, the 8,500 customers that really were the beneficiaries of this noise suppression. That's how we kind of think about the the scope of the problem, and that's how we go about solving it, is by thinking about these human cases.
Now, Greg, when you hear the number 30,000 alerts, that at your stage and size of the business, that's probably a bit bigger than the number of alerts that you might be seeing, but you're working on getting there, right? And I mean, do you feel like there's an awareness of the tools that are out there, whether they're the systems that these folks are working on or other tools? Because I remember, and again, we're talking about, more than 5-7 years ago, the tools at that point were so immature, and now we're finally seeing tools that are becoming more mature, but still I don't know how much of an awareness there is. So when you look at this, based on, again, your budget, the size of your team, what kind of solutions are there for you?
So we've been using the new Relic Alerts beta for 4 or 5 months, pretty much since it's been available. And in the alerts beta, you can certainly configure by rule basically how you want to be alerted. Do you want to be alerted a single time for every incident that occurs? Do you want to just have be alerted, one time? Basically have all of your incidents aggregated into one alert. And so we've certainly been taking advantage of that feature. When the PayPal API went down, we received one alert rather than one alert for every single error transaction that occurred over that 2-hour period. Right.
Still a lot.
Yeah, I mean, but potentially it would have been much worse had this not been, this rule had not been in place.
Right. When I recall those old days and I look at what we have now, I think things have come so far, but still it seems like there's just so much work to be done. I mean, what do you feel are the barriers between whether they're people in development, people in IT? What are the biggest challenges ahead as far as pushing this forward and addressing fatigue in this way?
Yeah, well, I think it's, as things evolve, you exchange one set of challenges for another, right? Right. So I think, as we started PagerDuty, we really tackled, let's make sure we get the right people together and contain the issue. And building on from that now, it's okay. It really comes back to this notion of the amount of complexity is becoming more than a human being can handle. And you need to be able to take that data, and yes, let's alert people on stuff that's actionable. But typically what we see at PagerDuty now is that people aren't just sending us the alerts that are actionable, they're sending us everything, because what they want is a complete picture of what's going on, and to apply some intelligence to go, okay, there's the problem, right? Go and focus your attention there. So I think what we're seeing is exactly what we're talking about here, is that this need to take all of this data that you're seeing, whether it's resource exhaustion or whatever, and actually make some sense of that. And okay, let's not go and wake people up in the middle of the night, but let's take that information and help paint a picture for organizations around how critical something is. Let's focus that attention on customer impact and application impact, but give them the other data so that you can enrich that view, because once you respond, well, you're going to have to do something about it, and time matters.
Right, it sure does matter. You mentioned resource exhaustion.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think a lot of business owners are thinking about, whether they're small or large companies, they're definitely concerned with, I think, the number of people that they have on staff. And the biggest emphasis that I've seen is we're talking not so much about money anymore as much as we're talking about the currency of time. That's something that is so challenging. Time management, right? How much time you spend building that new thing or getting that new service out there or developing that new technology. Whatever it is, the human beings and their time is the most valuable commodity, right? And the fewer people you have working for you, the smaller your payroll is and the more profit you make. These are simple things. How do we handle that? Because in my mind, we have automation, and machine automation is a huge way that we can reduce the amount of people that we have to have and what those people can do, improving their quality of work by letting them focus on the things that they're good at and the things that they enjoy. Dan, how is Big Panda helping that? Because I know that's, again, you talk about machine learning and seeing everything as large sets of data. Both of you have mentioned that. I mean, how does that work to help businesses become more effective and improve the bottom line?
Yeah. I think the biggest impediment and the thing that as a company we're really trying to help the industry migrate toward is creating cultures that value healthy infrastructure. I think we very casually now in Silicon Valley, throw around the term, somewhere between a mantra and a cliche that we're all software companies, which is true. That's a genuine trend. But we prefer to kind of take that one step below that and ask, why is that the case, and how can we use that to our advantage? And the way we use that to our advantage is by saying, culturally, at an individual level, and at a management layer, we're going to invest in metrics, we're going to invest in tools, we're going to invest in process that make that technology that runs our business run healthier. It kind of goes back to some of the things that Lou was talking about. Think first about what the metrics are that lead to shareholder value, that lead to employee engagement, that lead to things that really drive business growth. Then it's very easy to quickly connect those back to infrastructure monitoring. But you first got to identify what those business drivers are, and then it's very easy to draw a direct line between that and the value of using machine learning to reduce alert volume in IT operations.
Right. Yeah. John, I mean, at what point does a company need to start being concerned about this? I mean, Greg's concerned about it, but there are companies out there that have 3 employees, 5 employees. I worked for a Rails hosting company that, we had, including me, we had 3 people, but even with just 3 people, having that kind of rolling system in place. We paged Dan, but he didn't answer. Now we've got to page Mark. Mark didn't answer. Okay, now we're going to page Greg. That system, even that didn't always work and wasn't enough. So I anticipate your answer is going to be, doesn't matter how many people you have. But I mean, when does this start to become a real problem? When should businesses really start caring about this?
Yeah, I prefer the word care rather than concern, right? Which is we have real people, unsung heroes, responsible for shouldering the burden of keeping the lights on.
Right.
And that has a huge impact to businesses and customers and real people and real lives. So I think it goes back to what Dan was touching on and what I was touching on earlier around keep the focus on business impact, customer metrics, rather than start from, okay, all of these other alerts coming from all of these systems, what are the things we really care about? Because it's the volume of alerts, but it's also the quality of the alerts. And if you're going to wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I want to be knowing why I'm woken up, have information that's going to be actionable, and know that I'm making a difference to the business and to the customer. And I want to ensure that that's what I'm measured on. So it is really a cultural shift, staying as close as you can to the customer and working back from there. And quality of life and health of the people that are responsible is very something I and PagerDuty are very passionate about, because it's not about operational efficiency. It's about making sure the team is healthy, the care and feeding of the team, because they're the guys that are responsible for making this stuff happen when the time crunch comes.
Greg, that has to speak to you, right? I mean, managing a team and being the person that it gets woken up, caring about people, like that can't be overrated, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's essentially I'm the person receiving that call at 2 in the morning, so it affects me more than.
How has it affected you?
Has it affected me?
Yeah, how? Are you the same person you were before you took this job?
Startup life. I mean, it's I've been at this company now for a year, and so it's slow. The pressure of startup life, certainly wears on you over time.
Yeah.
But it's just something, it's something that you take. It comes with the territory.
Yeah, a friend of mine does software development for a company, and part of his job is also working in IT and being on call and helping customers. And he can never be too far away from a laptop. He can never be too far away from SSH. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we all have is how can we detach in a way so that we know, okay, if there's a problem, I'll be notified about it, and when I get there, I'll know what it is. I'll have the information that I need to do something intelligent about it in a way that reduces that stress that you're talking about, right? I mean, is that the direction that we're moving forward into a world where that information is there and we can see exactly because half the time you get to the computer and you're like, I don't even know what's going on yet. I don't even know what's going on. I don't know where the problem is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, if you think about the fear of being on call, right?
Right.
Particularly to organizations that are just transitioning to a DevOps approach, the fear going on call, I think, is, am I able to make a difference?
Right.
Do I have the right level of information that's actionable, and can I make an impact?
Yeah.
And then coming off call, the concern is, how is my behavior going to be used against me? So having a culture of healthy retrospection,
Right.
and being able to put, as Dan said, the emphasis on healthy systems, and not make this a people issue, making sure that we have this healthy culture of learning is really important, I think, to create the right culture for being responsible to respond.
Dan, do you have anything? We're almost out of time. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's going through my head hearing you guys both talk and thinking about what our customers tell us is very clear that the traditional NOC is dead.
Yeah.
And as the volume of change increases, both infrastructure change and code pushes, there's a need for a radically different relationship between humans and machines.
Yeah.
And what we see is a world rapidly approaching. I mean, we're right on the precipice of something that's just cataclysmic, and in terms of how IT functions within the business or supports the business, and that's going to be from where the traditional NOC operator, the NOC engineer, is going to move from kind of a student sitting in front of blinking lights and kind of playing whack-a-mole with alerts to being more of a teacher or a professor, and essentially training the system. The system's going to do the heavy lifting, but the NOC engineer, the human being, is going to be the one kind of orchestrating this symphony of alerts.
Yeah.
Do you think we're close to that point? Anyone who has a comment on this, where we'll have all of that information? I mean, if you had to project forward and say, are we going to be in a situation soon, and how soon, where one individual can understand a large number of systems behind the scenes, what's going on, and get that kind of effective notification and be able to take an action in a way that's not super stressful, in a way that's not that panic, that anxiety, and come in and say, oh, yes, it's 2 a.m., yes, it's Tuesday night, but here I am with an alert, and I know what's going on, and I can fix it without anyone else having to wake up. Are we close to that?
I think so. I think we are. And I think, look, there's always going to be times we get woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning because something goes wrong.
Sure.
We want to make sure, again, that those smart people are focused on fixing the hard problems. And I think what we're all talking about here is there's definitely an opportunity to get smarter in terms of how you take all of this constellation of operational data and make sense of it before you orchestrate that response. And I do think we're close. I think we're all seeing that every day. So yeah, for sure.
Definitely close. Well, that's probably, we've got to end, but that's a good place to end. Everyone, applause for our guests up here. Thanks very much, guys, for being up here and talking about this today. Appreciate it.